Welcome to the High Income Business Writing Podcast, helping you propel your writing business to a whole new level. And now, here's your host, Ed Gandia.
Here's what nobody is telling you about AI and your writing business. Your writing skills are now solving the wrong problem. The constraint that used to keep your skills in demand is moving rapidly. And if you're not moving with it, you're becoming the business equivalent of a really excellent typewriter repair shop in about 1975. Hey there, welcome to another episode of the High Income Business Writing Podcast, the number one podcast for freelance writers, copywriters, and solo marketers who want to earn more in less time doing work they love for better clients. With over 1.3 million downloads from listeners just like you across 101 countries. I'm Ed Gandia, and today we're diving into why following the constraint rather than the skill is the only strategy that matters for writers right now. And I'm going to show you exactly how to spot where value is migrating in your market before your competitors do. Look, I get it. Right now, you're probably feeling like the ground is completely shifting under your feet. Maybe your income is down. Maybe clients are ghosting you. Maybe you're seeing people with half your talent landing projects while you're out there working harder than ever to stay above water. Or maybe you're doing okay. Maybe you're in the 86% of my recent survey respondents who said that business in 2025 has been about the same or even better than it was by this time in 2024. But in that group, something emerged, something very clear happened or is happening, where a big percentage of this group is worried about where this is all going. They're worried about next year and the year after that, because if you're in this group, you're not sure how long things are going to stay stable or strong for your business, and you're wondering how you can get ahead of the coming wave that's going to catch many writers by surprise. This has been a very interesting year for me. Not only have I had a front row seat into the business of nearly 24 writers as they grapple with big challenges in the world of freelance writing, but I've also gone back to doing some writing work myself for 2 clients. And what's interesting about these clients is that I came in through the content marketing door. So that's what they hired me for. They hired me to create marketing assets for them, content marketing, to help them with thought leadership, to help them with email marketing campaigns. But here's the thing, where I'm about to add the most value isn't in creating their content anymore. It's in setting them up to create their own content, building custom GPTs for them, creating the processes and systems around those tools, teaching them how to not shoot themselves in the foot by using these tools blindly, and then building and expanding on an AI tool to help them run their operations much more smoothly. I never saw any of this coming. I thought I would just write for them, but the service that I provide these clients has evolved because the constraint has moved. And that's what we're going to be talking about today, because if you're still trying to compete on writing quality alone, you're fighting yesterday's battles, and you're not going to be prepared or ready for where I think this is truly heading. And before we get going, I want to give credit for many of the ideas I'm going to be sharing with you today to Sanjeet Paul Choudhary. He's the author of a number of books, including the most recent book, a groundbreaking book, in my opinion, called Reshuffle: Who Wins When AI Restacks the Knowledge Economy. This book, which is recommended to me by my friend Sarah Griesenbach, has really shaped my thinking about AI and the patterns of disruption we can expect it to carve out over the next few years. And one of the things I love most about the book is that it's timeless. This is not a book about AI tools or new developments. It's much more of a history, sociology, and human behavior book. And it does an outstanding job of explaining what's happening out there and what will happen to the shift in how work is done over the next few years. It's truly fascinating. It's a dense book, but it makes a very strong case for what we can expect based on history, because these are patterns that repeat themselves over and over again. And once you start understanding what factors are at play here, it's things just start making a lot more sense. And it's going to get you thinking at a much more deeper level about AI and what we can expect over the next 3, 5, 10 years. You'll have to put it down often, I'll tell you that, because you're going to need some time to process the idea. So it took me about 3 months to read because I can only digest a little bit at a time. And honestly, I cannot recommend it enough. I think if you're serious about the world of work and what you can expect and where this is heading and how you need to maybe rethink your business and your value, this is a must read. So I want to start this discussion in an unusual place, and I want to take us to a 3-star Michelin restaurant. And I want us to focus on the sommelier at this fine dining establishment. I want you to think about the job of a sommelier, or a somm for short. This is someone whose job it is to keep diners from picking the wrong bottle of wine, or maybe another way of putting it, how to help diners pick the best bottle of wine to enjoy with their meal. When you think about what this role entails, you realize that these people theoretically should have been extinct by now. I mean, these days we have access to wine apps, online reviews, AI recommendations, right? Information about wine is everywhere. It's free, it's instant. You can pull up ratings, tasting notes, food pairings faster than you can pull the cork off a bottle. And it's interesting to me because I studied wine for a long time, basically 30 years ago. I remember 1995, my fiance, who's my wife today, but at the time my fiance bought me a book, and I was in. I was hooked. I found everything about it fascinating, especially the history, the sense of place, everything about wine I found fascinating. And I remember in the 90s having to essentially take notes and bring a little cheat sheet with me and a little piece of paper when we would go out to a nice restaurant, so I could remember some of these things to pick a better bottle of wine. Now you just have a phone and you can look things up immediately. It's just fascinating. So let's come back to the somm. So why are high-end restaurants still paying sommeliers 6-figure incomes to help diners do something they could easily do with their phones? Well, here's the thing. Sommeliers were never in the information business. They're in the storytelling business, and they're in the confidence business. So imagine this. Imagine you're a company founder. You're at a nice restaurant. The big investor dinner, the wine list is 700 bottles long, and your palms are sweating because everyone's looking at you to choose the bottle of wine. Now, you could pull up your phone and check ratings, which would be awkward. You could ask the AI app what pairs with fish or with the pork chops, right? But not going to happen. You're probably not going to do that. What you really need at that moment is someone to make you feel like you know what you're doing, someone to make that choice feel effortless, someone who can turn your first sip into a moment where you look sophisticated rather than scared. The sommelier doesn't just pick wine. They eliminate the risk of looking foolish. Or say you're out celebrating a milestone wedding anniversary at a 5-star restaurant, You and your spouse are there to have a memorable experience. You know your way around the wine list, okay, but you want something special, not necessarily a big name. You want something you'll remember. And as you pour through the list, you recognize maybe 10 or 15% of the names. The rest are totally unknown to you. You ask for the sommelier, and the three of you strike a friendly conversation, which turns to the special occasion and the dishes you're considering and your personal preferences. And she guides you to two selections, very specific selections. She tells you the history of each wine, of each winery, their history, the history of the place where the grapes are grown, where the wine is made. And for one of the wineries, you learn that this is a sixth generation producer who takes a painstakingly manual and very detailed, old fashioned approach to growing their grapes, harvesting them, making that wine. You learn about Milo, the current winemaker, who's only 28 years old, but has a world class talent for ensuring that his wine has a true sense of place. And you've just been taken to a totally different place and time. You feel connected to the wine, to the people who helped make it, the family who's kept tradition alive for over 150 years. And when you taste that first sip, everything comes together beautifully. Now let's talk about your clients. They're not drowning in a lack of content. They're drowning in options. ChatGPT can give them 50 blog post ideas in 10 seconds. Claude can write their entire email sequence before their coffee gets cold, right? But can it tell them which blog post won't torpedo their brand? Can it identify which email won't get them sued? What angle will truly resonate with their primary customer avatar? Can it tell them which piece of content their CEO will actually sign off on? Here's the thing. Writing skills used to be the main constraint. The expertise needed to write a decent article or a set of copy required years of training and practice. But AI has mostly eliminated that constraint. You can give the tool a basic set of instructions, a simple prompt, give it to a non-writer, and they can prompt it well enough to produce average content. Now, is average good enough? Probably not. So let's not get into that argument, okay? My point is that we need to think about this because today businesses can quickly produce average content with little to no training or practice. And just a few years ago, that wasn't even possible. You needed lots of training and experience. So AI has removed that obstacle, has removed that constraint. It has squeezed the distance between incompetence and competence. And before you start objecting to this idea because the content that someone like this would create with simple prompting is what most of us would consider AI slop, I want you to take in this idea because this is super important and I cannot overemphasize it enough. What you see today is the dumbest and most incapable these tools will ever be. Let me repeat that. This is the dumbest and most incapable these tools will ever be. And to keep telling yourself that the writing craft will not be commoditized because these tools will never match the capability of an experienced, seasoned writer, that's a story that is not serving you and will not serve you tomorrow. Okay, so I think right now I'm probably going to lose some listeners, but I hope you stay with me because there's a lot of nuance here, and I hope you give me an opportunity to explain this. There's a lot to this, and I think getting upset is perfectly normal, but you need to understand what's going on and where this is heading. Okay, very, very important. Will AI ever be able to match your own level of writing ability? Maybe not. I don't know. Maybe not. Maybe it will, but that's not the point. The point is that it will get very close and it will do so very soon. At least that's what millions of businesses and marketing teams believe. And if that's what they believe, that's what they'll use to make decisions. You need to understand that. We as writers live in a different bubble. And that bubble may have a lot of value, but that's not the bubble that many of our clients and prospects necessarily live in. And as the tools get better, this idea will reinforce those beliefs and those biases in our clients. So, my urging to you is to please, please stop telling yourself that AI slop is your saving grace, because it is not. It might be today, but I would not hinge my business decisions on that assumptions. I keep seeing so many writers all over LinkedIn. Oh, look at this AI slop. AI will never be able to match what I can do. And I'm oversimplifying their messaging, but this is why companies can't or shouldn't do this. You need the humanity of a writer. Listen, I agree with all of that. But just because I agree with it doesn't mean that that's not going to be the reality. Okay. I would not keep marching on thinking that AI slop is my insurance policy, because that could disappear very soon over the next couple of years. And if you haven't planned for it, you'll be caught flat footed. And I would be willing to place a huge bet on that being true. This is the dumbest, the most incapable these tools will ever be. It's not going to flatline, and it's definitely not going back. They're not going to get worse. I guarantee you that. Now, before you think I'm being negative here, let me just tell you where the value is migrating. It's going from production skills, so from crafting the narrative and the copy, to applying your judgment as a writer, your discernment, your intuition, critical thinking, your taste, and your ability to communicate and demonstrate these soft talents or skills to your clients and to your market. Again, the skill of writing hasn't disappeared. The constraint that made writing valuable has moved, because that constraint is no longer in the production. It's no longer in the skill. When there are tools that clients feel are creating good enough content for them, that's no longer the constraint. And that constraint has migrated from production to judgment, from creation to curation, from can you write this to should we even publish this? Your clients don't really need more content. They need confidence that the content they are creating, with you or without you, is going to be the right content, delivered in the best way possible, that it won't backfire, that it will connect in a world of AI slop. And that, my friend, is a completely different business. Okay, so how do we spot where these constraints are moving? And this is a big element of the reshuffle book. So let me break down this idea into three types, because once you see the pattern, you can't unsee it. So the first pattern is there's this what I would call the scarcity to risk shift. Again, when content was scarce because it took a trained, experienced professional to write it and to create it, just producing it had value. I remember charging, $800 plus for a single, relatively short SEO-focused blog post back in the day, and clients gladly paid it. Why? Because well-crafted content was hard to find, especially in many areas of B2B. Today, content is infinite. Type a prompt, get a post. The scarcity constraint is gone. Again, I'm not going to get into an argument about, but is it, is AI slop? Is it missing something? In many cases, it is. Again, you can't judge these things based on the bubble you're working and living in. You need to see it from the perspective of a prospect or a client who may be looking at it differently, rightly or wrongly, okay? Now, don't worry. This is not a sad story, because you know what's replacing this? You know what's replacing the fact that, content is now infinite? Well, risk constraints. Yeah, the constraint is quickly moving from scarcity of production capability to risk. Risk is a new constraint. The Reshuffle book had a really good illustration of this, and it was basically the example of pufferfish. Now, stay with me because this matters. There's a good lesson here. In Japan, there is this fish called fugu. It's a type of pufferfish, I believe. I'm not sure if that's a general term for pufferfish, but it doesn't really matter. The thing is that this fish can kill you if it's prepared wrong. If you eat it, it could easily kill you. Seriously, one bad cut and you're done. Now, when refrigerating fish made seafood cheap and available everywhere, you would think that expensive fish would disappear, right? I mean, when you think about 50, 60, 70 years ago, the supply chain for seafood was totally different. And it was very, very expensive to get fresh seafood because the supply chain wasn't optimized like it is today. And we take it for granted, but it wasn't always this way. So what's happened is the supply chain has gotten way more efficient, way more dialed in. Seafood prices have come down, but fugu is actually super, super expensive. Fugu became more valuable. And the reason this happened is because you're not paying for the fish. It's not the fish. You're paying for not dying. When something can kill you and you want to have it, first of all, the fact that it can kill you, that's the value. Now, I have no desire to try this, but to a lot of people, they're paying for the thrill of eating something super risky. They're paying for someone with the judgment to prepare it safely. Think about that. They're putting themselves in the hands of this chef. That's what's happening to writers now. We're becoming the fugu chefs of content. And this was again, another powerful example from Shidari's book that really stuck with me. Because your clients can generate 100 articles with AI. You can do this so in an afternoon. But which ones are safe? Which ones won't tank their SEO? Which ones won't make them sound like robots? Which ones won't accidentally make promises they can't legally keep? Which ones miss the critical nuance that would have enabled them to truly connect with their audience rather than turn them off? Which ones need editing or small tweaks that will make them so much better, that will make them stand out, that will make them go viral, that will take them from massive embarrassment to a position of true authority? Which ones make it clear that these were not the product of AI? The constraint is rapidly moving from creating content to ensuring content doesn't erode or destroy a reputation. So that's the risk constraint. And this is where the action is right now and for the foreseeable future. But there's another important constraint, and that's the constraint of coordination. So many companies are using AI now, but they're all using it differently. Marketing's using Claude for blogs, let's say. Sales was using ChatGPT for emails and customer and prospect communications. Customer service is using some combination of tools. And accounting might still be copying and pasting from a Word document from 2019, right? These organizations are certainly not lacking information. They have tons of it. The problem, though, is that everything is siloed. And as a result, it's just chaos inside the organization. Beautiful, profitable chaos if you know how to fix it. Let me give you an example. One of my newer writing and consulting clients started off as a client for marketing strategy. That's how we started our engagement. It was a growth strategy, and that led to a retainer for things like monthly newsletters, email drip campaigns, and general marketing communications. So that problem is pretty much solved. But the challenge now is actually one of operational efficiency. So their general manager is the only one who has about 80% of the information the company needs access to. The problem is that most of that information resides in her head, or it's scattered across hundreds of files in a Google Drive. No one knows how to make sense of it. And even then, it doesn't matter they did, because so much of it is just in her head, which means that she has about 10 people every day calling her with a slew of miscellaneous questions that only she can answer. Now, I'm working with her right now to develop and expand a special custom GPT that her entire team can access when they have any of those nuanced questions. And the idea here is to free her from having to respond to multiple emails, calls, texts, and voicemails every single day. We have another custom GPT we're working on that enables field staff to be able to better draft customer and prospect communications that are very well aligned with the company's brand messaging, and regardless of their writing ability. Because as writers, we take for granted that everyday people can communicate well. And the problem is that they don't. Most people don't know how to write. I mean, look at, maybe not the best example, but look at comments on a YouTube video or just general writing out there. It's atrocious. And we forget we're living again in this bubble. We realize that most people don't have the ability to communicate well, clearly, use proper grammar, just make their argument flow and be logical. So that's what one of the things we're doing. We want to be able to give their employees the ability to communicate with customers clearly and effectively. That way, they and the company look good and they sound good. And that way, what they put out there is aligned with the way the company wants to communicate. Those are just some examples of how you can add tremendous value to clients by following and addressing the coordination constraints they're facing and struggling with. Because again, everything's siloed, different skill sets, different people acting on different information that might be just stuck somewhere and unusable by other groups and by other people on the team. Now, you're free to copy these ideas, but more important, I urge you to think about these examples from first principles. I want you to look for the patterns and the foundational elements embedded within. I don't want you to get caught up in the example as much as try to think through, what are the first principles here? What are the main foundational elements that Ed just kind of described, and how can I apply those to my own situation, my own clients? Because if you can start doing that, you can start spotting these nuanced opportunities on your own. You have to retrain your brain to be able to see these. And I say nuance here, and I do that purposely because these things are easy to miss when the world is noisy, when you're busy, when you're fearful, when you're not looking for these opportunities, and when your brain is 100% conditioned to only look for writing opportunities. Let's face it, we've spent decades, in many cases, just conditioned to look for writing opportunities and to pitch writing opportunities. It's going to take some reconditioning to look at your clients and your prospects differently, to ask a different set of questions, to propose different ideas, to pivot the conversation so you can propose different ideas that may better serve them. So let me give you a practical way to spot these constraints in your own business. Step one, list what clients actually pay you for today. Not what your website says, not what your LinkedIn profile says, not what you wish they paid you for, what actually shows up in the invoices. Okay, so that's step one. Step two, ask yourself what happens when AI makes each of these things 10 times faster and cheaper. Not if, but again, when, because it's going to happen. It's already happening. Step three, find the breakpoints. What breaks when your current service becomes commoditized? What new problems emerge or could emerge? Here's what I mean. When articles become commoditized, it's actually a good thing in some respects because there's no doubt that most of the articles out there will be AI slop in the world, out there in the market. Most of it will be junk. Okay. So in a way, I'm actually kind of glad about that because it's easier to stand out when most of the junk that's out there is that, just junk. The risk of your client adding to that problem now means they need a different kind of help. They need more strategic content governance. They need someone to help them figure out and manage all this. Or take email campaigns. Now everyone can write them, but no one knows how to connect them to the rest of the customer journey. That's a journey orchestration challenge, and it requires a good amount of judgment, experience, of intuition, taste, wisdom, discernment. Again, it's a new constraint, which you can help solve. Or how about social media posts? Sure, AI can write them. You and I see those AI generated posts every day on LinkedIn. It's pretty sad. But it's also a good opportunity because when so much of it is just junk, when it's AI slop, we have an opportunity to help our clients shine. So how can a brand or thought leader ensure that they don't sound like ChatGPT or like they have multiple personality disorder? That's brand voice preservation. Again, A new problem has emerged, a problem you can help them solve or ward against. So yeah, the breakpoints is exactly where you might just find your next business model. And that's a very important point. That's why you should be looking for these things. Now, I know what some of you might be thinking right now, okay, because I get this all the time. Every time I use the word strategy anywhere in there, which I try to avoid because I know what it conjures up in the brain of writers. And it's this idea that, Ed, I'm not a strategist, man. I'm not qualified to give that kind of advice. I mean, I'm just an experienced writer. I think you're looking or you're talking about somebody else with a different set of skills. And I want you to stop that thinking right now, okay? Because that is a story you're telling yourself. And you are way more qualified and way more knowledgeable and wise than you give yourself credit for. Let me tell you about Rick Rubin. Rick Rubin is a famous music producer. This man has produced albums for, dozens of names you would instantly recognize. People like Johnny Cash, Jay-Z, Adele, the Red Hot Chili Peppers, Metallica, the Dixie Chicks, dozens and dozens of others like this. He's won 9 Grammys. He's literally shaped the sound of modern music across multiple genres. And by the way, if you haven't read his book, The Creative Act, it's a must read for every creative professional. It is absolutely fascinating the way his mind works, his philosophy, his thinking. And I think today, more than ever in an AI world, this is the kind of material and philosophy that we would all do well adopting. Now, here's the interesting thing about Rick Rubin. He doesn't play a single instrument, not one. In fact, he can't even read music. He doesn't know how to work a mixing board, apparently. And by traditional measures, he's completely unqualified to be in a recording studio. So what does he do? Why do people pay him millions of dollars? He orchestrates. He asks the right questions of the artist. He creates the conditions for great work to emerge. He helps artists find what they didn't know they were looking for. And if you read his book, The Creative Act, you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. One producer who worked with him said, Rick's gift is that he's not a musician. He's not listening for the technicalities. He's listening for the feeling, for what serves the song. That's you right now. Pretty soon, and again, it's actually starting to happen now, you won't be hired to be the best writer in the room. You're going to be hired to orchestrate. You're going to be hired to ask the questions nobody else is asking, to spot the risk others miss. You're going to be hired to connect the dots between marketing and operations, between brand promise and customer experience. You're going to be hired to basically be a Rick Rubin. You don't need to be a strategist with an MBA. In fact, that would probably work against you. You need to be someone who understands how all the pieces fit together or don't fit together. Someone who can say, well, wait a minute. If we publish this, it might contradict what your sales team is saying out there. And here's why. That right there is orchestration. Taking that role is representative of the rebundling of our work. We're moving from being the musicians, the gig players, to being more of a producer, or maybe some hybrid role that includes production. In other words, the ones who ensure everything works together to create something meaningful. And trust me, that's infinitely more valuable today, and it will be over the next few years. So I mentioned the word rebundling. Let's talk about that for a minute. This is another key theme in the Reshuffle book, a very powerful theme. So let me tell you about journalists for a second. When social media came along, everyone said journalism was dead. I remember those days, kind of the mid 2000s, between 2008 and 2010, that theme started emerging because information is now free, and over the next decade, it started to really catch on, this idea of, well, the news has been commoditized. Who needs newspapers? And this is why you're seeing newspapers really dying and have been dying all over the country. So many have gone out of business and the remaining few are struggling. But look at Substack. Look at these journalists making millions of dollars, literally millions of dollars from Substack newsletters and similar type of platforms. Take Barry Weiss as an example. Now, lover or hater, I'm not here to create any kind of political statement or anything like that. This is just an illustration. Lover or hater, Wise was an op-ed staff editor and writer at the New York Times before she abruptly resigned in the summer of 2020. And she started a Substack newsletter, which she eventually grew into a network of newsletters and online news channels called The Free Press. And very recently, just a month or two ago, she sold The Free Press to CBS for $150 million in cash and stock. Think about that. In 5 years, she created, as a journalist, an asset that she sold recently for $150 million. How in the world did that happen so quickly? Well, Wise and other journalists who have reinvented themselves did this by asking a different question. They didn't ask, how do we compete with free information? When the news, anyone can get for free anywhere. Instead, they asked, if information is free, what is now scarce? In other words, where has the constraint moved? Right? The answer is what's truly scarce now is trusted filters, curation, someone to tell you what actually matters in the flood of noise, opinion, analysis, thoughtful commentary, engaging commentary. They rebundled their skills around this new constraint. And what I am suggesting here today is that you need to do the same thing. And I'm going to give you the exact framework. And that framework is a set of simple but powerful questions. Is there more to it than this? Yes. But I want to give you something to get started. And it's a series of 4 questions. Question number 1, what's getting unbundled in my market? Be brutal here. So for me, let me give you an example. It was copywriting and content marketing writer being separated from strategy. AI can now write copy. Again, is it perfect? No. Is this the dumbest these tools will ever be? Yes. It can't understand the politics of getting that copy approved by 5 stakeholders. It can't know what's truly ready for prime time versus what needs more work and why. But still, it's the work used to be bundled a certain way. That bundle has completely been split open. Question number 2, what constraints that this unbundling now create? Are there new risks or coordination gaps, decision paralysis? My clients could generate copy in seconds with AI now, but they don't have the time or the skill to evaluate it properly. And I think the good clients understand this. They have infinite options, but they have zero confidence or very low confidence that they can actually put this out there and it's going to work. Question number 3, how can I reconfigure my role based on everything that I've shared with you here? Stop selling tasks. Start managing constraints instead. Okay? I stopped calling myself a writer and started positioning myself as someone who helps companies implement AI without destroying their brand. The title doesn't really matter. It's all about how you're presenting yourself and your value. And I started talking about how I can help them use AI to remove the biggest points of friction within their marketing team and in other areas, including operations in my client's case. Question 4, what complementary capabilities can I bundle? This is where it gets fun. Risk assessment plus brand strategy plus AI training plus implementation support. That's it for me, but it could be a different set of elements for you. I'm not competing with ChatGPT. I'm the one teaching companies how to use it without shooting themselves in the foot. Okay. Let me make this real concrete. If you're a content writer, stop saying I write blog posts. And I'm oversimplifying here, of course. I don't know anyone who says it that way, but they say the equivalent to that. Stop touting that you're a great writer and the ChatGPT can't match your level of humanity. That is the wrong argument. That's not going to get you anywhere. Those things are all true. I agree with you, but that's the wrong frame right now. You have to move on from this. Start saying instead things like, I ensure your content strategy doesn't become an AI dumpster fire. Something along those lines, the equivalent to that. You need to come up with something. If you're a copywriter, stop saying, I write sales pages. Instead, start saying, I protect your conversion rates from AI-generated trust killers. If you're an email marketer, stop saying, I write email sequences, and start saying, I orchestrate customer journeys across your entire AI-powered stack. These are all examples, okay? I'm not saying you need to copy these exactly. I'm trying to just show you what I mean here and the way you need to start thinking differently. You see the difference here? You're not selling writing. You're selling judgment. You're selling coordination. You're selling confidence in a world where writing is free, but trust is expensive. The painful truth I need to share with you is basically this. If you only want to sell writing deliverables and you don't want to consider any other opportunities for bringing in other forms of value to clients, like advice, guidance, even including services you may not even be able to conceive of right now, you're going to eventually find yourself selling buggy whips in a world where cars have taken over. Okay. And I heard from many writers who feel this way. I just want to write, Ed. And listen, I need you to understand, I'm not judging you for that. Okay. I'm not casting judgment. I'm not saying that, you don't know what you're doing or you're thinking about it the wrong way. I completely respect everybody's decision and how they arrived at that. And everyone has a different set of values. Everyone's at a different point in their career. Everyone has different goals and objectives and a different vision for where they want to go. So I totally get that. I'm talking about folks who, no, they want to keep going. They want to do well. Then if that's the case, then you need to rethink your options here. You need to rethink how you look at your value. These things may not happen next year. I'm not a futurist. They may not even happen the year after that, but I can guarantee you that they will happen eventually. I know this stings. I know that your whole identity might be wrapped up in being a writer. And again, I respect that, but stick with me. Because the market doesn't need more writers right now. It needs constraint managers. It needs risk mitigators. It needs coordination specialists. It needs people who can create confidence. It needs advisors and guides. Remember our sommelier from earlier in the episode. They don't sell wine knowledge. That's been commoditized already. They instead tell a story that does what? That creates a lasting memory. That creates an experience, a memorable, fun experience for the diner. They sell confidence at the moment of choice. Again, with my home services clients, I'm not writing their content anymore. I'm building custom GPTs for them. An operations GPT that helps them handle customer service conversations, a marketing content creator GPT that maintains their brand voice across all channels. I'm creating the processes and systems around these tools, teaching them how to use AI without destroying the local trust they've spent years building. I'm also bringing in my team who can execute brilliantly. They can manage the projects. They can set up the newsletters, email drip campaigns, my client system. They can make updates to their website. The stuff that I just don't want to do. I don't like doing that stuff, but I got a great team, 2 folks, Jessica and Elizabeth, who do awesome work, and they love to do this stuff, which is wonderful. So basically, I can also package in or bundle in marketing operations tasks that my client doesn't have the people for to do internally. It's a hybrid set of services and value that works really well for all of us. Here's some simple language you could use as a starting point, and you can edit as needed. So again, these are just the foundational elements, and you can just apply them to your situation. Instead of I write content, you could frame your value as I ensure your content aligns with your brand governance and legal requirements. Instead of I create copy, you could say I protect your reputation while scaling your message. Instead of I manage your blog, you could say I coordinate your entire content ecosystem so it actually works together. And the formula for this is basic. It's a basic template, basic messaging template. So the old way was I do task for industry, right? I do this thing for this particular industry or target market. The new way is I manage constraint so you can outcome without risk. So I manage blank, which would be a constraint, so you can blank generate this outcome or set of outcomes without blank, which would be without taking on these particular risks. So for me, I could frame it as I help home services companies build AI-powered operational systems and marketing asset generation tools that scale their marketing, improve customer communication, and streamline their operations, all while preserving the local personal touch that drives neighborhood trust. But honestly, even this messaging is evolving because what I'm really doing here is becoming their strategic partner for navigating this AI transformation that's happening now. One day I'm building a customer service GPT. The next I'm training their team on prompt engineering. Then I'm bringing in my team to execute email campaigns while their staff learns the new systems. And the point is, I'm not locked into one deliverable or one type of value. I'm solving whatever constraint is most painful for them right now as they navigate the massive shift. So you see what happened there? I went from selling a thing, which was writing, to solving a problem, just managing the chaos of AI adoption. I was able to go from delivering a document to being their guide through this AI transformation. Because one sells a commodity, the other sells peace of mind. And guess which one commands higher fees? I'll let you figure that out. All right, so let's get practical. I want to give you your 30-day constraint hunt if this has been resonating with you. This is just a construct, okay? Just so you're not overwhelmed and you kind of have an idea of what to start looking for. Week number 1, I would urge you to just observe. So track every client concern that isn't about the writing itself. Document what they're really worried about. And I guarantee that it's not whether you can write. They already know you can do that. It's about other things. So keep a notebook. Every time a client hesitates, write it down. Every time they ask for another revision, ask yourself, what are they really afraid of here? Okay. So week 1, it could be week 1 or 2 or 3. It doesn't really matter. The point, that's the first step. Start noticing. Next, week 2, test a new offer. So start formulating something new. Pick one constraint you've identified from your analysis and create a micro offer around managing that constraint. Maybe it's a brand safety audit for your AI content or a risk assessment of their new messaging. I would say if you're not confident about this yet, okay, fine. Make it free for the first couple of clients because you're learning here. You're not necessarily selling it yet. You're trying to figure out, what's going to actually connect? What's going to resonate? What am I actually going to enjoy delivering? So treat it as an experiment. In exchange for doing it for free, you would just ask the client for a detailed testimonial, or even better, the ability to write a case study on the engagement and how it went for them. Week 3, start playing around with your new positioning. Test new ideas, rewrite your LinkedIn headline, update your email signature, change how you introduce yourself. Stop saying writer as kind of the main focus of your title or how you talk about yourself and what you do, and start describing where else you add value. In fact, I would even dare you to go 1 week without using the word writer to describe what you do. And again, not that that's a bad word. It's just that think about everything we've talked about here today and how just kind of putting yourself in that box limits what you're able to offer, the value you're able to deliver in this new world. Now, let's go back one more time to our sommelier. These people, whether they realize it or not, saw the future before the rest of us did. They knew information would be free. So they became what? They became storytellers. They became merchants of confidence. They knew facts would be abundant. So they instead became curators of experience. And that's you right now. I want you to really understand this. This isn't about AI taking your job. That's a very myopic way to think about this. And this is the way the mainstream media really likes to frame the issue. That's way too simplistic. It's way more nuanced than that. This is really about your job shape shifting into something else over the next 2 to 5 years. And I really believe that it could shape shift into something and might actually be more valuable than what you're doing right now. The writers who are going to thrive will probably be the ones who spotted where the constraint moved and they planted their flag there first. So again, stopped asking, what can't AI do yet? Because even though that's better than not even asking that question, I still feel that that's the wrong question, because that question just keeps you playing defense. Instead, I would urge you to ask, what does AI break? What problems does it create? So like in Alex Hormozy, the marketing genius and consultant out there, has this idea that new solutions create a new set of problems, right? You buy a new, bigger house, guess what? You're happy, and then you realize, oh my gosh, I got to furnish it now. I got a new furniture and I need more of it, right? Same thing with AI. So AI solves all these problems, but what does it break? Because in that break, so to speak, in that new constraint, that's where your new next level in your business is going to live. That's where the money is. That's where the opportunity is. Again, I know this is scary. I know this is different. I know it feels like everything you've built is crumbling, but you're not becoming less valuable. You're becoming valuable in different ways because the constraint has moved and it's time to move with it. I also know this is a lot to take in. I could do a whole podcast series on this topic. I could do an entire workshop. And in fact, I did this last month with my boardroom coaching clients, and we spent nearly 2 full days working through this material that I shared with you today. So yeah, there's a lot to unpack here. I know I didn't give you all the answers. Maybe I left you with more questions than you had going in. My intention was really just to give you enough to get you thinking about this and thinking about it differently, to plant the seed so they can start to germinate. We're going to revisit this idea over the next few months here in the podcast. But for now, my urging would be to just run that constraint audit. Start this week. Just pick one client, one workflow, start looking at your prospects, start looking at your market, start asking yourself a different set of questions. Ask yourself where things break when AI enters the picture, and then ask yourself, how can I be the solution to that break? Your future is some version of this, and it's probably more lucrative than what you're doing now. This is Ed Gandia. Thanks for listening. I hope you have a great rest of your day. Well, that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed the episode. And just a quick reminder to grab your free copy of my latest book, Earn More in Less Time: The Proven Mindset, Strategies, and Actions to Prosper as a Freelance Writer. You can get your free copy at b2blauncher.com, where you will also find the detailed show notes to this and all my other episodes. Enjoy and have a great day.